know that some in our audience know the finer points of hockey.
The Chris Johnston Show.
We are your friends.
The biggest stories, bringing you inside the game.
What did you hear?
The Chris Johnston Show. Powered by Sports Interaction, Canada's sportsbook.
What is going on?
Here's Chris with your host, Julian McKenzie.
Part of the game.
This past weekend was an anniversary of sorts for us, CJ. Around this time last year, the Chris Johnston Show became a thing. So congratulations on a 1-year anniversary of the Chris Johnston Show.
One spin around the sun, eh? Who would have thought it? Who would have thought it?
I mean, I was pretty confident we'd at least get to 1 year. It was a pretty good show.
I was too, but you never know. You never know how these things go.
That's true, I guess.
It's a lot of early morning chats with you and I and producer Nick.
I love the early morning chats. I even love that for me, as someone who lives in the mountain time zone, they've gotten even earlier for myself. I know some people are going to look at this. Whoever was watching on YouTube, you're going to notice it's completely dark behind me. It's like we record these, at least for me, it's like 6:30 in the morning today.
Yeah, that's legit, man. I was not up at 6:30 Eastern time. I'll tell you that much.
When did you do your run today?
I have yet to do it, but it's still, I've got about 18 hours left in the day to try to squeeze it in. So I'm not, no concern. Probably around noontime today.
How many, and I get that by the time people will get this, the run will have already happened, but how many days in a row have you done your run?
October 15th is day 900. So
holy crap.
So we have to work back from there. I don't know the date today. So but I'm basically at around 880 or pretty close to that.
That isn't, congratulations on that. That is incredible.
Yeah, man. I'm set to get to 1,000 in January. I think January 23rd. So
that's insane. So anything special for day 900 of the great CJ run?
It's funny you ask. My birthday is actually October 16th, which is the next day. And I'm running in the half marathon in the Toronto Scotiabank marathon. So I'm going to run a half marathon on my birthday, which is day 901, but I'll count that as the special way to mark 900.
Okay. Well, good luck on the half marathon. A lot of milestones coming up for you in the last little while. So the anniversary of the CJ show this past weekend. Also this past weekend, the 1-year anniversary of the podcast debuting at number 1. And we are about 5 episodes away from episode 100 of the CJ show. So that on top of your birthday and the milestone day of your running, since you started this about 900 days ago, a lot of double zeros.
Yeah, man. I like round numbers. I'm not usually one for I forget dates and stuff. So I don't always mark anniversaries. I honestly forgotten until you put it in the group chat what day the pod started. You could have told me it was September 10th or October 10th. I wouldn't have remembered, but nice round numbers are good.
Yeah, honestly, it was by chance. I was like, it's pretty late for me that night when I realized that it was the 1-year anniversary. And then I was like, oh crap, let me just find a tweet and put something up. But it's good to acknowledge birthdays. It's good to acknowledge anniversaries. It's good to acknowledge points in history when they happen. There is a question though, with regards to the podcast that I have. Obviously, you come across a lot of people in your day to day. A lot of those people love listening to the podcast. A lot of people who are hockey fans, obviously, love listening to the podcast. Who is the most unlikely person you have ever come across who said, I listened to the podcast? Like they came up to you and they said, I listened to the CJ show, and you did not expect at all that they would do it. It could be anybody.
I don't know if I have a good name for you, but I will say generally I'm surprised how often I now get stopped and people bring up the podcast, because obviously earlier iterations of my career, I was on some TV, which, you would get recognized in public, but more and more and more, I'd say 90% of the people that stop me or just go hey, CJ, in my neighborhood or at the grocery store, I love the podcast, which is really cool. And I wouldn't have guessed it. I was actually at a birthday party on the weekend and there was a guy there and he was apparently he was a little starstruck that I was there because he listens to our podcast. So it happens a lot, but I don't have. It's not like I don't have a good example. Say like a player coming up and saying they listen. I'm not sure that we register on that level at this point. We might. Who knows? I mean, keep in mind I haven't really seen a lot of players because we're just getting back into dressing rooms and the like. But certainly a lot of feedback on the streets of TO that I know that it's not just me, you, and my dad listening to this.
I was just going to say that I went on a date a couple of months ago, and the person I was on a date with was like, "Oh, I listened to your podcast." And I was like, "But you're not a hockey person." But they were like, "Yeah, they still listened anyway." So that would have been my answer.
You're burying the lead, man.
No, it was like a one-off, like from like how many months ago. Nothing's going on with that, but it was still kind of cool that like I don't know, I got looked up or on Google or something like that, like from before. It was really interesting. I did not expect that.
Yeah. I mean, look at like the numbers are there. Somebody's listening. Yeah, I think the coolest thing too, and we've acknowledged it at times in the past, is how many people that say live in Europe are listening, and people that aren't just in our direct communities. I mean, it just reminds you of the power of it, but you almost feel removed from that aspect because obviously I'm sitting here at my house, you're at your house. I don't have you almost feel like it's just two buddies talking, and you forget that there's people on their runs or commuting to work or whatever they're doing that are listening along with us. So I'm glad that people enjoy this, and here's to 100 more, my friend.
Yes, thank you to everyone who listens to the show, whether you're in the hockey world, adjacent to the hockey world, someone who's just kind of casual, it doesn't matter. Thank you so much for watching or listening to the Chris Johnston Show. Can I ask one more question before we get to our sports interaction segment? You mentioned something pretty interesting about being in the locker room. You haven't been in the Leafs locker room as of yet. Any idea how that's working out for you guys in Toronto with that?
Yeah, it's starting up now in preseason. For the time being, that the team has a policy that reporters wear masks while they're in there, which is great. I mean, it's been since March 2020 that the reporters, I mean, not just in Toronto, but pretty much around the NHL, I think maybe a few exceptions hadn't been in there. And so, this season will operate much like the world did from a media standpoint. Before we'd ever heard of the word COVID, and that is starting up now. So I think it's going to be beneficial for. I mean, honestly, it sounds strange to say it. Mental health part of our jobs. It's just going to be you can connect, you can do your job a little better. I hope for the players. I know there'll be some instances where they're annoyed by a big crowd around their locker, but in general, I hope they see benefit to it too, because the Zoom fatigue was real, my man.
Seriously. I was in the Flames locker room on Sunday night, and to see a scrum in front of Jonathan Huberdeau, that brought me back. I was like, I mean, I know we've seen a few scrums, at least in the last little while, at least I have, but like in the locker room, that was the first time I think I'd been in some NHL locker room since the pandemic. I don't think I was in the Canadiens room at all when in the last little while, and definitely not in the visitors room. Yeah, definitely not the visitors room. So it was really nice to be back. It was really cool. There's no mask restrictions in Alberta, or at least not in the Flames locker room. I haven't totally looked into them just yet, but I like being back in the room.
Yeah. And, I think I haven't heard any grumbling. It's just the Leafs policy at this point. I don't know what every team is doing. I'm sure there's other teams maybe that have masks. Obviously, some don't. I think they're concerned, clearly if a player gets COVID under the current protocols, I believe they're out a minimum of 5 days. A team doesn't get cap relief if that happens. A team like the Leafs isn't likely to be able to carry extra skaters or too many, maybe one, because of their cap situation. I can understand why a team would make that competitive decision to do it. And look, no one's complaining. I still remember, honestly, March 2020, man. I think it was March 12th. The Leafs were supposed to play a game against Nashville. I was at Scotiabank Arena that morning for what would have been the morning skates. That ended up being the day that the league was put on pause, as they called it. And they brought a few players to the podium. And at that time, it kind of felt weird having players at the podium because we weren't. I don't think I'd put my mind, or most of us had put our mind around, what this COVID thing, just how, long it would be and what it would mean. And now it's novel to get back into the room. So, I think everyone's going to be better for it. I think that's it's going to be good for the league. Frankly, I just don't see. And the one thing, maybe if you're at home, you haven't thought about how the sausage is made when you see NHL reporting done. Part of it is it's just easier to let a bunch of people into one room, and then any player that's supposed to be in there is just there, and it gets sort of done in a 15-minute window versus stacking up press conference behind press conference behind press conference. I do think on a certain level, it's just an easier way to deal with that media availability. It's not just because I want to go and look at all these nice rooms that the players get changed in.
Yeah. Not to mention, for all those press conferences stacked one after the other, that means a lot of the same quotes being regurgitated in the same story, as opposed to, okay, well, if a player is in a corner and if you get to him first, maybe you have him for a couple minutes and then the rest of the horde kind of shows up and descends on that player. Or maybe it's a player who isn't necessarily the most talked about player in the locker room, and you're able to have a one-on-one. Having one-on-ones with players, like I that's one of my favorite things about being a journalist. If you're able to go into a room or take a guy on the side and talk to him one-on-one, and everything you're getting from him is going straight to you, it's a great thrill.
Yeah. And so I'm going, there's a preseason game on Wednesday, a Leafs Canadians preseason game. I'm going to go there, and presumably that'll be my first time back in the locker room since a long time ago.
Yeah. Looking forward to that for you, my man, and looking forward to You Can Bet That. By the way, if you are playing on Sports Interaction, as always, it's for people 19 and over. We ask that you play responsibly, and there will be a link to responsible gaming strategies in the description of the show. Welcome to You Can Bet That with David Bastl. Good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you guys. Hope you had a great weekend. Some exhibition hockey's finally here. Yes,
of course. By the way, remember to hit up sportsinteraction.com/SDPN for all of your gaming needs. I want to start with the Calder Trophy odds, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I was looking at the lines on Sports Interaction. Matty Beniers leading the way. The line at 4.90. Second place, Owen Power. That was going to be my pick for the Calder Trophy this year at 6.87. How do you see that stacking up?
You know what? Those are obviously two of the big favorites. Yeah, absolutely. And, when you look at Owen Power, we know kind of his background and all the upgrades throughout, like playing for the World Championship team and being a stalwart there. Buffalo Sabres are going to give him every single opportunity to probably play 25 minutes a game. And that kind of defenseman, he's got to be my favorite. But CJ, I'm going to give you this. I'm going to give you a little bit of a long shot here. Cole Perfetti, Winnipeg Jets, point a guy with the Moose when he was there, played in the top 6, top 9 at times. They are expecting some big things out of him and maybe their best prospect. And the thing I like about Perfetti too is that the Calder Trophy doesn't have to belong to the team that finishes first or like an Avalanche team or something like that. Just the guy that's going to contribute offensively. I think he's going to get that chance with the Winnipeg Jets.
Plus, you love the Winnipeg content, so I mean,
I do. Yeah, rest assured, yes.
that ties in nice. The one observation I have, and I know Moritz Seider won the trophy last year, but defensemen typically have a tough time winning. It depends on the season, of course, but it's harder to get recognized. Seider did put up a lot of points. I don't know if Owen Power will do that, and so maybe Matty Beniers or Perfetti might be worth looking at just because. They're both on teams, I think, where they'll get a chance to play offensive roles.
Yeah.
And it's impossible to know, right? I mean, that's the hard part about this is we don't know who's going to pop enough, like who's going to be ready to go right out of the gate, get the coach's trust, get power play time, all those sorts of things, because that's a factor in ultimately who stands out as the best rookie. But, as great as Owen Power might be the best player singularly in this class, but it doesn't guarantee he's going to win the Calder.
Yeah.
By the way, speaking of offensive talent, Phil Kessel,
yes.
How many goals is he going to get this year? The line for over 16.5 goals is at 1.74, under 16.5 goals at 1.97.
Well, we know he's going to be playing for a new team. We know he's a little revitalized, but we also know he turns 35 in about 2 weeks. Last year, 8 goals. I'm not sure where to rate this. My gut tells me under. Right now, the 16 goal plateau. I think the Golden Knights would be happy if he was a 15 goal guy. They'd be really happy if he hit that 20 goal mark, but he hasn't done that in 2 of his last 3 years. CJ, do we know exactly where he's going to be penciled in that Knights lineup? They do have some offensive talent there, and he will get some power play time. We know that.
Yeah, I like that. And it was last year's a low shooting percentage year for him. It looks like some of the goal total last season for Kessel, to me anyway, was bad luck, poor shooting luck. And so I would think a bounce back is there. He's looking fit and trim. Based on where the Golden Knights are, I think they're going to have to play him, assuming he's healthy, and he's been healthy for about 12 straight seasons as he closes in on the Iron Man streak. I think he's going to play a lot of games, and man, they've set the line well in this one, because I'm with you. 16 it's a long way for him to go at this stage of his career, but I wouldn't rule it out. Actually, I think that playing with that team, he's going to be in the top 6, I would think, a lot of the time, and if he just bounces back to normal shooting rates, it's not as crazy as it might sound.
Don't forget to check out sportsinteraction.com/SDPN for all the best odds before game, in game, and the best props. Again, sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. David Bastl, we will see you soon, buddy.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
So from your neck in the woods in Toronto, it seems as if with the games that have started already.
Wait a second. Do you mind if I have a little snack here while we do this segment? Or
you got to be kidding me, bro! I'm not doing this again. I
just wanted to have a high
refuse
quality
to
snack.
do this again. I'm not doing this again. This is ridiculous. This is just this. You're just doing this to piss me off right now. You're doing this to piss me off. I don't like
this Aero bar is delicious. I have to say.
I don't like this. You know what? You stay there for a couple seconds, all right? You entertain the podcast for a couple seconds. I'll be right back.
For anyone that missed our last episode, Julian and I had a difference of opinion on what constitutes a great chocolate bar. So, I went and bought a couple of the ones I like and sent some photos to the group chat. But I figured I might as well have it on here. Oh no.
This
man
is ridiculous.
Is eating an O. Henry at 7 a.m.
You're eating an Aero bar at 7 a.m. Sorry, my time.
It's 9 a.m. here. This is a great time to eat a top quality chocolate bar.
It's still not an ideal time for you to be eating chocolate at breakfast. This is ridiculous.
Have you ever mixed coffee and chocolate, man? It's a great combo.
I imagine it should be a good combo. I should probably make myself some coffee and do that, I guess. But I guess we're doing this podcast where we're just going to eat chocolate out of sheer pettiness.
I'm just making a point.
Clearly you are. And it's not, look, any excuse for me to eat this bad boy, this O. Henry, I'm going to do it. It's a superior chocolate bar. I was talking to my dad about this at Walmart. Shook his head at all your choices that are supposedly above O. Henry.
This has been the most divisive topic of our entire year in this podcast. I mean, Steve Dangle jumped in. He's definitely not an O. Henry fan. Producer Nick is an O. Henry fan. It's a divisive chocolate bar. It's a divisive topic. But, we should get to the segment now. I just wanted to have a little snack.
Yeah. Well, I wish I had a fridge in here so I wouldn't have to worry about my O. Henry bar melting in my office. Okay. I'll try to be civil for the next little while here. I just want to ask about, just because you're covering it, Leafs training camp and the goalie situation. How is it with Matt Murray and Ilya Samsonov?
I'd say so far so good, but the Leafs played 2 preseason games. They did one of these doubleheader style games on Saturday. Samsonov played and didn't allow a goal during his time in the net. I think he played 40 minutes. Matt Murray hasn't yet got into a preseason game, so we're not at a point where there's really much to judge on. But I suppose it's encouraging that Samsonov didn't go in and let in 5. That being said, I do think we have to be careful always with the preseason results, not just for goaltenders, skaters. I mean, so many of the veterans are going at like 60%. A guy used to tell me, who worked for a team, that he's always cautious of what he called September sweethearts. And that's the players that really wow in these early, stages of preseason, because his point is usually by October, November, December, we've forgotten that ever happened. So, it's obviously been a big talking point around Leafs training camp, just because, probably the most controversial set of decisions Kyle Dubas made is bringing in those 2 guys and for such a big season. And so how they fare will be debated. I'm sure we could get to a point where there's a debate about who's the number 1 and who should be number 2, those sorts of things, but they haven't really started yet. And to put a point on that, though, do you look back at the goalies that changed teams this summer? Obviously, essentially, they chose these guys over giving Jack Campbell a 5-year deal. I think that was a term the Leafs really didn't want to consider going to with the guy that was their number one the last 2 seasons. Darcy Kemper goes to Washington, but there wasn't a lot of goalies that moved that I think were obviously better choices. But there's some risk at this position. There's lots of teams around the league right now that don't feel totally great about their number one or aren't 100% sure what they're going to get. That's not to say it won't blow up totally in everyone's face, but I think if you when any discussion about the Leafs goalies and the decisions made, the context has to be it was a summer where there wasn't a lot of product out there if you needed a new number one, and so Leafs have, I think, picked 2 guys that they hope that can platoon and so far there's no red alerts going off here yet, but it's still early in training camp.
Well, what would you say to people who take your point about the goalies and then say, well, even if there wasn't a lot, I mean, the Leafs found a way to get not 1 but 2 project goalies in the for their net, whereas some other teams, I mean, a team like Washington was able to get a Stanley Cup winning goalie in a Darcy Kemper. Jack Campbell, fine, he hasn't gone past the second round of the playoffs, but he's at least played in the playoffs. Matt Murray and Ilya Samsonov are question marks by comparison.
Well, I would say if you look at the Leafs last season, they ended up with 115 points, and for more than half the year, they were getting like 890 goaltending from their 2 guys. So they were winning 7 out of every 10 games, despite getting below average goaltending last year. And so I would say that, Ilya Samsonov's 25. He's a former first-round pick. Is it crazy that he could have a bounce season, that something could be unlocked here? I don't think that's a wild suggestion. And, Matt Murray's won those 2 Stanley Cups. He did have a stretch in Ottawa where he was very good. I think health has been a consistent issue for him. Again, no guarantees, but, the Leafs are banking on them to be average. I don't think anyone here is suggesting that they're going to unearth, an Igor Shesterkin or, something like that. I think that the clear plan was just to try to get someone that was good enough almost not to lose games. I mean, they still got a pretty strong team and a lot of offensive firepower. So, and the other part is that just because this is a decision to start camp, if it doesn't work, Kyle Dubas has been a GM that's been pretty good at addressing sort of issues, I would call them in season. That's how Jack Campbell got there to begin with, shortly before the pandemic. So, there's I'm not necessarily defending it. I don't want it to come off that way, but I can understand how they got there. And I don't think it's not crazy to say that they're like a 9-10, one of them is a 9-10, and maybe it's even better. I mean, Jack Campbell, had a pretty good long stretch of games at almost 920. If anything, last year was his most concerning season. He had a really long down period. They had to give him some time off during the season. He got it back together and was pretty good late in the year. But I could see why there's a shyness to give him 5 years when, you've got a 2-year commitment here with Matt Murray and 1 year of Samsonov. I mean, there's an ability to pivot, I think, a little bit easier if these 2 guys aren't the answer.
Before we tear away from the Leafs, any update on Rasmus Sandin and his situation? We're pretty much going to be on Rasmus watch until something happens.
Yeah, I think we've entered a critical stage, actually, Julian, of these talks. It's as we record this on Monday morning. I think there's going to be a concerted effort here to get this thing across the finish line. The true deadline, if you want to look at it that way, is October 12th. That's when the season starts. That's when the cap hit starts being calculated for the Leafs. Won't go into the details, but essentially every day into the season before Rasmus Sandin was signed, it changes what his cap hit would be and basically makes it harder for the Leafs to accommodate a cap hit. So I think both sides would recognize getting a deal done at the absolute latest by the start of the season is the deadline. But, we're still talking about a 22-year-old defenseman here. And he's one that I think the Leafs, want to give the best opportunity to be ready for the season. So, I think that there'll be a pretty strong push to get him back in camp, to get him to Toronto. He's in Sweden as of Monday morning, and have him on the ice with the team to practice, to play some preseason games, and obviously get some conditioning skates in. It's just, you can't replicate that, I don't think, truly on your own. So I would say look for some action there pretty soon. I don't have much more information in terms of exactly where the deals are at, more than I've said in the past on our pod. But I do still think it's going to be a short-term deal for Sandin, and I think there's a real push on to get him over to Toronto this week and get him skating in training camp.
All right. Let's start looking at some other storylines around the league as best as we can. If you don't mind, I'd like to read a quote that I came across from Aaron Portzline, who covers the Columbus Blue Jackets. And Johnny Gaudreau had something to say when he was asked about the Calgary Flames off-season moves. When I say I love Calgary, this is the quote. When I say I love Calgary, it's the city. Now that I'm on Columbus, I couldn't care less what they do as a team. I obviously want to beat them. But as a city, the fans, the organization, the way they treated me, I always loved it there. It was a great place to play there for 9 years. Once I left, I didn't care anymore about the team. Obviously, I'm more focused on the Blue Jackets and what our team is going to do. They got better, or they got worse. I'm not really sure. I'm focused on our team and go from there. What do you think about that response? What do you think about that line of questioning? Just general thoughts on this chapter of Johnny Gaudreau, Columbus Blue Jacket.
I think it's a good response, honestly. I mean, look, it's like he's been through a breakup in a sense. It's not that he wishes anyone ill will, but it's still a competitive sport, and it would be almost weird for me if he came out and said, well, I'm still cheering for the Calgary Flames. I'd like to know the timing of that quote. Did it come out after Daryl Sutter made the Tkachuk Toffoli quote that was, it was very Daryl Sutter, but a little bit of a knife in there. One guy's had won the Stanley Cups and been part of long playoff runs. I mean, maybe it just shows, look, now that those guys are on the other team, as much as we love them while we're here, we're trying to beat them. So, I don't have an issue with that. And I actually do think Johnny has been sincere, him and his wife, about their love for the city of Calgary. I mean, it's clear that while they made a family decision to move on from the Flames, that he wrestled with it kind of down to the end to a certain degree. And it was a hard decision for them to reach because they were fond of their time in Calgary. And so I think he's telling the truth there, quite honestly. He's not that worried about the Flames. He doesn't need to weigh in on the debate that they get better when he left, because that's, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense from his standpoint. But he's still got no animus towards anyone, going down to the Dome and watching games.
By the way, yes, that Johnny Gaudreau quote came after what Daryl Sutter said about Tyler Toffoli and Matthew Tkachuk. I was there for that. I don't think it was that surprised that Daryl went that way. I mean, Tyler Toffoli's been a guy of his since the LA days. He did win a Stanley Cup. He seems to value that. Maybe it's just because I'm in the early stages of getting to know Daryl Sutter. I was not completely surprised that he went that way.
Neither was I, but there's undeniably some shade being thrown in that case, right? And as I say, I think that's good. I mean, look, our sport is still far more tame when it comes to entertaining quotes and sort of playing up grudges and all that kind of stuff. I say bring on more of that in a fun context. But the first kind of battle line was drawn there from Daryl Sutter's side of things, where it's these guys that I'm sure if you asked him about Matthew Tkachuk the last 3 seasons in Calgary, he didn't say anything. He wasn't highlighting the fact that he hadn't had playoff success yet. He's probably singing his praises, as he should. And now he attacked it from a different angle. And so, something similar might be coming Johnny Gaudreau's way at a certain point too.
Yeah, exactly. Not to mention, I think a lot of people, if you do a consensus with Matthew Tkachuk and Tyler Toffoli, people might point at Matthew Tkachuk, but also he's not a Calgary Flame anymore. If Daryl Sutter was saying, hey, I'd rather Matthew Tkachuk on my top line than Tyler Toffoli, that doesn't really go well, especially for a guy like Tyler Toffoli who really wants that opportunity to play top line. What else do you want him to say?
Well, and if we're really digging into it, what's the whole discussion with the Flames right now? Big picture, it's about, are they a better team? That's what Gaudreau was asked by Aaron Portzline, I presume, something along those lines. Mm-hmm. And Daryl saying one guy's had a bunch of playoff success. Well, I mean, we're really not going to know if the Flames are a better team, I think, until the playoffs. They've had some great regular seasons in the previous incarnation of their team. And so I don't know that it matters if they get more points this season, but it's about, does this work a little bit better in the way the game's played in the postseason? Is Nazem Kadri add an element and Huberdeau and maybe even having Toffoli more up the lineup? Maybe this this does unlock something. I mean, we're going to have to wait till April or May to get some answers there, but I think that's part of the underlying discussion from 10,000 feet on the Flames. And so Daryl Sutter was weighing in a little bit. I think he's pointing that, one guy's done it in the past, and I got faith to do it again.
You have the 10,000 feet perspective on the Flames. It's cool that I'm pretty much on the ground, and vice versa with the Leafs.
You're probably getting into the weeds on training camp battles and line, configurations, which makes sense. I mean, look, hardcore fans have lots of appetite for that, but I think most people, that's why we're going to do our sort of one burning question or our one idea for each team, because, no one has time to be in the weeds on all 32 teams at once. It's just too much to digest.
Yeah, I don't know how people do, find a way to have 32 thoughts on each team, but we will find a way to have our own set of 32 pensées at a later date of the CJ show.
Are you suggesting we're ripping Elliot off, or
no? In fact, who is Elliot? Elliot,
are you throwing
Elliot
shade
Moose
at another hockey podcast? Because that's not my intention.
No. The only Elliot I know is Elliot Moose. That's the only Elliot I know. You remember that TV show? You might be too old for that, Elliot Moose.
I don't remember what you're talking about, but I know Elliot Friedman pretty well. It looks like him and Jeff Merrick are having fun touring around Boston Pizzas doing live shows. So cheers to that, boys.
Cheers to Boston Pizza live shows. By the way, I really, and I know I asked producer Dick about this. I really want a Decode Elliot Friedman sweater. I really love that sweater going around. I don't know if some people have seen it. It's this cool sweater where it says Decode Elliot Friedman on the front. And you know how you'll have those acronyms for different cities on the back? Where like most people write MTL, he might write MON. He has these different little 3-letter acronyms or whatever. And like it's like plastered along a map of Canada for each city that he's labeled. I really want that sweater, really badly.
That's a good one. I haven't actually seen it. I saw you chatting about it in the group chat, but Elliot's a beauty.
He absolutely is a beauty. One more segment before we finish off the Monday edition of the CJ Show. It's Monday, so it's Ask CJ time. This is where we take in questions off of Twitter, off of Discord, all the fun stuff.
Shout out Discord.
The last few weeks, it has been bumping with questions. I have to say, though, we've never had a trivia question come in for Ask CJ. You probably know this, but let's see if you do.
I might.
I don't know. Who knows? Damn Daniel on Discord asks, how many shorthanded goals has Alexander Ovechkin scored in his career?
I believe the answer is 1.
So so you're saying 1. Is that a final answer?
Final answer.
The answer is 5. Alexander Ovechkin has 5 shorthanded goals in his career. Thank you for the trivia question, damn Daniel.
It's a good question, given he scored 700 goals.
Yeah, considering how many he scored, especially on the power play, even strength, but only 5 shorthanded goals for Alexander Ovechkin. I'll move on to Aiden on Discord. What teams and or players are you particularly excited to watch this preseason? Also, how much preseason hockey would you say you guys watch?
It's funny. I was going to ask David Bastl to set an over-under for CJ games watched in the preseason. I would say the games watched would be like 3.5, and I might take the under. This is something like I just find there's so little to be learned with it. And look, it's still a good time of year. I'm a Blue Jays fan. If I'm at home these nights, I'm wanting to watch the Jays or the NFL on the weekend. So I'm going to go to a couple games, and obviously I'll watch those games, but I'm not going out of my way right now trying to find, which games are covered on TV. I don't, it can be fun, like if you're in Montreal, I see, you're going to enjoy seeing, Uri Slafkovsky. Like you're just trying to get a sense, can he hang? How does he look? All that stuff. But I just find most teams that the quote unquote battles are not really that significant. And I just think a lot of it's already locked in who's going to make each team. And so really the biggest question of preseason is who can get through it healthy. I saw Vancouver last night, for example. Mikheyev left their game against Calgary with an injury. I mean, that's what you're hoping not for. There you have a big free agent signing Getting knocked out of a preseason game is never a good sign. I don't know exactly his status, but yeah, it's a long way of saying wake me up in about 2 weeks.
I was going to take the over on that line, but that's because
you're
I mean, that makes sense. Yeah.
Like you
can't,
gotta watch the
I gotta
tape.
watch. Yeah, I can't skip on that.
But are you watching, if on TV, I don't even know if it's available, would you be watching a Canadians Habs game on your night off during preseason? My guess is no.
No, I wouldn't. Not on my off night. I'd probably, I don't know, go out and discover the city a little bit more, to be quite honest with you. And I have the excuse. I just, it's been a little over a week since I've been in Calgary. So,
right.
Fair point. Question from Alex Adams. I am trying to make it as a sports podcaster. Any tips from how you guys would, okay, it's a bit worded a little weirdly, but any tips on how you, any tips for Alex Adams from doing our show on how to make it as a sports podcaster?
Well, I think you want to try to be distinctive. I think you want to be authentic first and foremost. So be yourself, share what you really think, let the audience know who you are. But quite honestly, I feel very lucky, Alex, the way this has gone with our podcast, the fact that people listen, it's still a bit surreal to me. So, I can't really sit here as an expert in any of this other than, to be consistent, to be yourself. And I think it is important to stay at it for a while. Like anything you start new, there's kind of the surge of excitement when you first do something. And then maybe if it doesn't feel like it's happening right away, you might be discouraged, but do it for a long, long time. I think you'll build an audience. I mean, no one is a better example than the Steve Dangle podcast, which they've been doing for years and years and years and years. And is now a monstrosity with an entire network and, has all of us affiliated with it. But, that started kind of as a few buddies at a certain point. And so, I think there's value in staying at it and giving it your best. But welcome to the space. We can help you in any way. Let us know. And yeah, just have fun. I mean, at the end of the day, we're just having fun, right? It's just here to hang out with Julian for me, a couple times a week and talk about hockey. It's a pretty good thing to be doing.
It's a pretty good answer. It's more or less what I would have said. I don't even need to get into more in depth, like, get this equipment or anything like that. Just be you, have fun, and be patient. Actually, that's probably the biggest thing I'd say. Be patient, because a lot of people, they get into podcasts, they don't see the numbers that they want right away, and they get discouraged. Like, Rome wasn't built in a day. You have to just kind of grind at it for a while and celebrate your little victories when you get them, if you care that much about viewership and listenership and all that. Just be patient with yourself on that.
I'd say being patient would be advice I'd give to any younger person trying to do anything, frankly, is that wouldn't apply just to podcasting. I think if I look back on the early stages of my career, I was always impatient about whatever step I viewed that I needed to take, getting in the press box or getting on the road or covering the Stanley Cup or all that stuff. I always felt like it was never happening at the speed that I wanted. And the truth is, now that all of that stuff has happened for me, it almost happened too fast. So, I think that you should be really gentle with yourself and understand that longevity is a skill too. You want to hang around for a long time. You don't just want to get it all tomorrow and then be left with nothing. I think you want to build slowly, and that's the way you can be built for success.
I'm going to take that advice to heart as someone who was very impatient with their career trajectory to this point. This one from Cronwall 55. Oh, are you going to add something?
No,
I thought you were.
That was a yawn, if I'm being honest. Sorry.
Yes. I thought I saw that breathe. I was like, oh, you're going to add something.
I'm having a sugar crash after that Aero.
Man, I had a piece of my O. Henry. I feel fine. I don't know about you. From Cronwall 55 on Discord. Are you placing a bet this year on the Stanley Cup winner?
No, I will not, but I'm probably going to be forced to pick one. If I don't want to
pick it yet. Don't pick it yet.
Well, the truth is I don't want to just pick one of the 5 teams that'll probably win. I want to actually think about it a little bit, because I'm going to have to pick it, I'm sure, for, my written copy at North Star Bets. Everybody wants their preseason picks. I haven't done my picks yet. But keep listening. We're going to share that at a certain point. But I definitely won't be placing any bets on it. I'll leave that to the professionals.
Which of these addictions from My Strange Addiction would you be most likely to partake in? This is from Bootmaster Ben. Eating mattresses 1 every 2.5 years, drinking gasoline around 15 teaspoons per day, or eating tires around 14 pounds a month.
That's a truly bizarre question.
That'd be the strangest question we have ever received on this show.
And none of it sounds appealing.
No.
I guess I'd be eating mattresses.
Yeah, that's a whole big one you have to do every 2.5 years.
Yeah, well, did you say 14 pounds a month of a tire? Like, that doesn't sound great.
Yeah, that's pretty heavy. That's pretty, yeah, I don't know, especially if it doesn't have tread. I bet it must be like dusty.
Man, I'm glad I didn't have that one in advance, because I wouldn't know how to answer that even if I had an hour to think about it.
Last one from Insider J Money. LOL, I promise only one question. We are 1 month away from Movember. Who is on your Mount Rushmore of great mustaches and facial hair?
Oh, wow.
There's really one person who's
Insider J Money is really like bringing the heat.
He loves this show. He really loves the show. And you. He loves you. He likes me, but he loves you.
Who's the most obvious mustache? Like Dennis Eckersley back in the day?
Oh, you're not even gonna go hot. Oh, you're gonna go like all sports. I like this.
Well, who's the best sports mustaches? I mean, Lanny McDonald jumps to mind.
Yeah, that was my first thought too.
Sort of like iconic for his mustache.
Remember Brian Wilson, the Giants closer?
Yes.
Yeah, he had some pretty good facial hair back in the day. Rolly fingers. He had the twirly mustache, I think.
Yeah. I mean, Austin Matthews probably has the best current mustache. I don't think there's a lot of competition for mustaches.
Yeah, I guess he would be that guy.
Did you see the clip where Austin reacted to Terry Koshan, the reporter from the Toronto Sun, who's come out of the pandemic with a pretty good bandito type mustache, and it drew some excitement in the Leaf scrum. Man, Mount Rushmore of mustaches. Have you ever had a mustache, Julian? Like straight mustache?
Yes, I have done it. I remember I shaved it off when I was still at Syracuse, and I showed a photo of myself completely clean shaven to my mom, and my mom thought I looked like a criminal. So I've resolved to having some form of facial hair ever since.
Wow. Well, I've never gone straight mustache. Like I've done sort of this beard or goatee look at various points, even when I was younger, but never straight mustache.
Apparently, when I was younger, I think when I would try to say mustache, I think it would, was it me or maybe a cousin who said this, but it would come out as moose crap when I was really younger. Like my grandma would remind me of that like all the time.
Maybe I can go mustache for Movember.
Brent Burns, Joe Thornton. Those are two obvious facial hair people.
But they don't have just mustaches, do they?
Yeah, but like I think the question has mustaches and facial hair, so those definitely count. I'm
interpreting it where you cut that, like it's like where you shave all here, so it's just the mustache.
Okay, but the question does have great mustaches / facial hair, so I think if we're able to include facial hair, we can definitely include those too, and that opens up a whole world of possibilities.
Well, Joe Thornton is on the Mount Rushmore. Like when he had his peak beard, like when he got in that fight with Nazem Kadri back in the day, and like Kadri accidentally took a clump of his beard out. It's hard to think of a more iconic, especially in our age of the NHL, facial hair situation. I mean, then you go through, then we unlock all this stuff with the playoffs. So there's so many epic playoff beards. Man, Insider J Money. It's a Monday morning. I really love your support, but my brain power is just limited in this moment.
Tweet at us at either SDPN Sports, reporter Chris, or JK McKenzie all of your favorite playoff or just any type of sports beers. It doesn't even necessarily have to come from the National Hockey League. That being said, we do talk about the National Hockey League on this podcast every Monday and every Thursday. CJ, always a pleasure kicking it with you to do these shows, man. Always fun to do. And we're getting one step closer to episode 100, and I couldn't be more excited.
And this was a particularly sweet Monday, thanks to that delicious Aero bar.
Okay, let this one go, okay? We're not doing this again. Thursday, we'll have a new episode. We'll have stick taps, yada, yada, yada. Subscribe to the podcast. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Listen to all the other podcasts on the SDPN network. There's a lot of great content, and I promise you will enjoy it. And also join us on Discord. For CJ, I'm Julian, saying so long. CJ, do you want a final word before we go?
Congrats to Adam Wilde on his marriage. I listened to that SDP episode. That was great.
Marriage?
Well done, Adam.
Peace.
The Chris Johnston Show.
Powered by Sports Interaction, Canada's sportsbook.
Inside the game, twice a week. Follow Chris on Twitter @ReporterChris. And follow Julian McKenzie @JK McKenzie.
The Chris Johnston Show.